each one, with the exception of the CARES grant, the CARES grant specifically focused on PPE and really addressing PPE at the start of the pandemic. The next two grants really focused on SEL, social emotional support, interventions, social emotional support, and programmatic support, what districts may have felt like would help to address learning gaps at their respective districts. And we started to implement 2021, 21, 22, and then 22, 23. The CARES grant has expired in June of 2022. The ESSER 2 grant is scheduled to expire in June 2023. And the ESSER 3 grant is scheduled to expire in 2024. The board might recall last year, as a result of our budget gap, we were afraid that we would have no choice but to accelerate the financial cliff that you heard so much about. And we left last school year with a close to $16 million gap between us and the city. The three applications that we submitted to the state of Connecticut, again, CARES has since expired, predominantly a grant filled with PPE strategies and activities. ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 was more on staff and programmatic supports, and the same with ESSER 3. The board might recall, and I just want to detail some of these things for you. I'm going to look down, make sure I capture them. Might recall some of the strategies, and I just want to walk you through them. And so one of the strategies that we had submitted as part of the grant was a comprehensive overhaul of our HVAC system district-wide. This was a planned commitment of $2.7 million. We spent $100,000 thus far. Just going to go through a couple of COVID-like strategies, if you will. Additionally, these strategies totaled $7.6 million. Again, this is as of June 30th. We have spent $1.5 million. Additional secondary classroom space, part of the plan in budget season. And so I had a couple of different board members had asked the question, where are we with our COVID relief monies? Of course, there are a lot of questions probably by the council, probably our mayor, our board members, and our city. Like, where are we with that $38 million? And what does that mean for us as a district going forward? So just circling back, again, last year we ended with a $16 million gap that we talked to quite a bit. And because we have not had to continue forward with these positions and these strategies as planned, we have saved quite a bit of money on the COVID relief funds. And so instead of us being in a position where the monies will expire this June 2023, it appears now, not appears, but we are positioned now to end in the cliff. Instead of being in front of us 2023 in June, the cliff will now be pushed back a year and delayed to June 2024. I'm going to walk you through some general numbers. I'm asking the board if we can come back and review in more detail in committee, as soon as available committee meeting as possible, to walk you through the details. But we've essentially, with the $38 million that we were awarded, we've essentially spent $10 million. As of June 30th. Now then it begins to get a little complicated, but then we are still encumbered $17 million from now until June 2023. Right, so encumbered, we are committed to another $17 million up to next June 2023, leaving us with $11 million. And this is why I feel like we need to get in committee and talk these things through. The $11 million, since you have your pens and pencils out, As we looked at all of the grants that we have exhausted, from Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, Alliance, the general funds, there is $7 million in positions across the district we are not able to fit in any grant. Those grants, and they remain eligible for ESSER, the American Relief Program submission. There was already $2 million in ESSER. We could not move those to any other revenue stream. It was the $2 million, and you might recall we had hired about 14, 15 teachers for the high school initially as part of ESSER 2. We never cut those teachers. Positions we did cut through attrition and fold into the general fund budget are the elementary teachers. We hired additional elementary teachers. So for some of you who have children in our elementary schools, all of a sudden, Shelter Rock Elementary School had a couple additional sections. Great Plain, who has historically always had 2 sections in every grade level, had 2 additional sections at the building. Oops. I think I've already mentioned Shelter Rock. Stanley Ruff received 2 additional sections last year. We removed those sections from Stanley Ruff, from Shelter Rock, from Great Plain, down to 8, saving, which I did not mention, another $1 million for the next 2 years, so it's $1 million and $1 million. So that's why we're in much better position. And then the cabinet and I, quite frankly, being really conservative going into the summer, given our conversations with you to wrap up last school year. Typically, with this money available to us, we would be very aggressive with trying to provide support, particularly in intervention support. But we did not. We just kind of held firm with our plans. We left the COVID as planned, and we did not go outside of that plan despite the needs in the school community. So that $11 million that I just left you with, and I'll just go back again, $38 million. We spent 10 as of June 30th, 2022. That leaves us with 28. There's $17 million encumbered between staff and strategies and programs between now and June 30th, 2023. That leaves us with $11 million. The $11 million is necessary because right now we currently have a gap with the city, but it's improved. The gap has shrunk. We don't have a resource, a revenue to pay for the $7 million gap we have. There was $2 million already in ESSER. There's another $5 million that will not fit in any other revenue bucket that we have. So from that $11 million for 2023, 7 has to come away, and so now that leaves us with $4 million. Be careful, it's not free money, but it's $4 million that we need for programming. And the programming, and I believe we spoke to some of these things in the curriculum committee. I also talked about this last year as an expense to this year's budget. That did not happen, and this is our mandated reading program from the state that the curriculum department is interviewing and finalizing that list now. I believe the expectation is we have to choose one this year and begin to implement next year. Those numbers are coming in between $2 to $4 million. Carrie, does that sound right?
Yeah.
$2 and $4 million. And I believe the state has identified 5 programs that districts across the state of Connecticut have to choose from. So I know the board, like this news is not necessarily, like everyone's not smiling because there's still a gap. But the 16 million has been shrunk to 7. And it's been shrunk to 7 because our planned activities, we did not have to implement them. The team and I are happy to walk the board through again. I'd love to be able to do this in committee, finance committee. I think it would be a good place for us to speak to and ask all of the questions we need to. And then also happy to follow up with the presentation if the board would like. But I wanted to make sure we begin to talk about this going into budget season for next year. I had an opportunity to talk to Kate and Al before the board meeting today, share with board chair as well prior. Again, this is good news for us. There's still work to be done. We still need investments. But I know I'm cautiously optimistic because I feel like this is a more doable gap to fill. So I understand that might leave us with some questions. I'm happy to answer them team and I, we've all walked this journey together, so happy to answer any questions.
So that seems like good news. So it shrunk to 7 million is the gap that we have to make up. Have we, I missed the last finance committee meeting, almost every one of them actually. But have we got a list of things what that would mean, like programs, staff, stuff that we got like a list, I think we asked for that a couple times, a list of what the cuts would look like or is that strictly in the finance committee meeting? Like, is there gonna be a list of, hey, we don't get the 7 million, we get 4 million, we get 3 million, what the cuts are gonna look like? Is that, have we started on that yet?
We've started a whole bunch of things. So the answer is yes. I mean, we ended last school year with some programs that could be compromised if. So we did that in the last meeting in June. I know we did because I talked about them. And we have not prepared a menu of if the city gives us this, this is what we're cutting. If the city gives us that, this is what we're cutting. We have not done that.
When is that coming?
And for one, we haven't prepared and finished our own budget yet, right? And so we will do that, and we'll be doing those meetings publicly with the board and kind of walk through all of those realities. We also have a committee that John has been leading and getting feedback from a committee that will be making recommendations.
Is that the advisory committee?
That's the advisory committee, and Ralph, that's not the only source of information. We have the own cabinet, our own board that I think we'll have to talk through. But at least this gives us foundationally anyway, kind of what we're dealing with, and I think this positions us a little bit better strategically to talk about next steps.
Yeah, certainly less grim than it was.
Totally.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So my question is kind of like to the same, so being on the advisory committee, how does that affect that work, or does it at all?
So we were talking about some of the feedback thus far from the advisory committee. I think the advisory committee moves forward with their recommendations and continues as if we're going to be challenged with cuts because the reality is there's still a gap. There's still a gap that exists. And whether the sense of the urgency might be a little different, but I think that advisory committee moves forward with their recommendations, and then we can talk about phases of implementation, what we will pull from those recommendations, et cetera. But I think they still continue to move forward with that for sure.
So just two things. Does the word attrition fit into the savings for teacher at all?
Yes, Ms. Russo. So thank you for that question. We had, as the board might recall, I believe this was an ESSER 2 strategy. And this was for that idea of social distancing. And we hired 10 elementary teachers. Through attrition, we were able to fold. So Michelle, Teresa, Louisa, and I are all elementary teachers as an example. And we've been hired as extra teachers in the system. Ralph, Gladys, and Kate all resign or retire. And instead of keeping the extra positions, we take their place, i.e. attrition, and then we just lose those positions. We just fold them in, attrition. And so that was a savings of $1 million a year for us, $2 million in total because it was a 3-year strategy. So thank you for that question.
And am I being naive in thinking this $4 million, $7 million gap hit us in 23 to 24?
24, 25, yes. So literally pushed it back one more year.
Okay.
Michelle?
We still have that last meeting that we had with $12 million we need in staffing, right? That's going to be in conjunction with this number. It's been reduced significantly.
Yes.
We still have that
Yes.
as well, right?
Yes, yes.
So you're looking at like 19.
No, so
Like
it's,
the 7 plus the 12.
no, it's reduced.
Oh, it is?
And it's reduced because of the savings of the pandemic. And so we have that money for one more year. And with that money for one more year, it will, instead of ending this year, it ends the follow. The American Relief Funds, instead of ending this year, it ends the following year, as originally scheduled. We were going to accelerate because we needed to fill the gap.
I see.
But to your question, and you remember that slide,
Staffing, yeah,
right?
that staffing.
That slide will likely come back on the table, and we'll begin to discuss what does that mean, maybe in phases, so maybe we don't do the whole thing at once. I don't think we'll have to. And you know, again, we'll get some feedback from the advisory committee and have discussions amongst the board. Hopefully we don't have to lose any positions, but
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
Anything else from the board members?
Thank you for the good news, sir.
Yeah.
Would a round of applause be inappropriate?
It's a good start for us, that's for sure. Certainly a heck of a lot better than it was this time last month. And I want to thank the finance department, the cabinet. We've been talking about cautiously optimistic, but we've been working on this for a few months now. Working on, number one, moving staff to what we deem the appropriate space to pay them from. So this was a heavy lift, certainly for the finance department and the payroll department. But it really took the whole team to put this together, where Kara's advocating, saying, no, my people should be coming out of title because. Kelly saying, my people should be coming out of title and IDA because. And it took a number of people to come to the table. So I'm pulling Kara away from her department and her work. Same with Kelly, same with Mike, same with Kim. So I just want to thank all of them for getting us to this point. But it really helped us to land to this evening with some confidence. We can say we're in a much better place. But frankly, we were a little reluctant to do that until we crossed our T's and dotted our I's several times. So we feel really good about where we are, despite looks like everyone's cautiously optimistic tonight, but I understand.
Would you like us to try and pick a date for a
That would be great.
finance?
Yes. And I was looking at the meetings. It looks like our next finance committee is not scheduled until January. It would be great if we could have one in December.
You'd like one in December?
If we can. If not, certainly before we have
Yeah.
our board meeting in January.
Do you have any dates in mind?
I'm just gonna throw out
Christmas
December 14th, Wednesday. What were you gonna say, Rob?
Christmas Eve.
Kevin, I'm sorry, we have the teacher pipeline in here anyway, so I'm not sure how large the room will be, but pretty sure we're setting up a little bit early.
Can we talk about the pipeline conversation now? Because it would be in a meeting in person, but we were going to maybe encourage the board to come in person. How about you talk about the pipeline?
Well, so annually, Rob Pody and his group will do, the students will do a presentation of their work through their internship and the work that they've done in the minority teacher pipeline. It's a very special night, and it's an opportunity for the students to articulate and reflect on what they've learned in their courses. And so they were in recently, and we're looking for a date with which to have that event. And we talked about having it here so there's a little bit more traffic and more of our folks can see them. And we did select the 14th, and that was 5:30 to, oh, I'm sorry, 4:15, hang on. 4:15 to 6:30 prior to the board meeting, so that they'd have more interaction with our folks.
Say that time again?
That was 4:15 to 6:30.
Can we do it after?
So they'll just be here in advance of the.
December 14th?
Yes.
No board meeting scheduled for that.
No board meeting that night, so we do that.
Actually, I've got a hold and I've got the one
No,
here.
Kara,
It's 5:30 to 7:30, my
Mhm.
mistake.
So they scheduled it for Wednesday in this room,
Yep.
hoping the board would come here since they
Normally
typically
come on
have the
Wednesdays.
meetings
Yep.
at West Common. And so they were hoping if they had the meeting here, we may get some more board traffic in here. For those of you who are not aware, the pipeline program has been in place for probably at least a decade now.
Yeah, maybe 7, 8 years now.
Okay, and we've hired 3 teachers from the pipeline program now, meaning students who graduated from Danbury High School, bilingual family students who go through the pipeline program through college and then come back and teach in Danbury. So it's a long commitment. We have at least 2, I'm sorry?
That's great.
Yes, it is, it is. And so, and then our students, in these poster sessions, they make presentations on the work they've done in the high school part of the class.
They do real lesson plans.
And you would think you're talking to college students. It's
Yeah.
really an amazing night. Their families come, and it's really kind of like a mini graduation for them in this program. And then, of course, we hope that they continue in their studies and pursue a career in education. Obviously, all of them do not, but the ones that do, some who have hung around, we've been in position to hire them. I was fortunate enough to be here for our first hire at Park Avenue School,
Yeah.
and she's been great.
And that's at 4:30?
So I misspoke, so I didn't have my glasses on earlier. So there's 2 meetings on my calendar. One was an original hold, and the other one says Danbury Teaching, 5:30, Teaching Pipeline, 5:30 to 7:30 in the boardroom.
But we can stop that at 7 if we need to.
Yes, of course.
Or 6:30 if we need to.
Does it need to be in person, or can we continue our Zoom committee meetings?
Certainly can be.
Okay. So, how about that Tuesday, the 13th?
I don't have a board meeting.
What?
I mean, board chair.
What time? 6? Finance committee.
6?
Tuesday the 13th for finance committee meeting via Zoom.
Does that work, Alan?
That works.
When, I apologize, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When do you want to have?
Does this December 13th work at 6 o'clock, remote meeting?
It does.
Okay. Should be good, it'll still be on the Tuesdays as we typically have.
Mr. Walston, we
Yes.
have negotiations in here until 5:30 that night, is that okay?
It is okay on Tuesday because
Yes.
we'll be in a remote meeting.
Okay.
It's fine. Thank you. Oh,
It'll be Zoom.
Yes. Okay, so finance, Tuesday, December 13th at 6 PM on Zoom.
Pipeline,
And the pipeline is the following day here at Beaverbrook,
5:30.
5:30 to 7:30.
and I'll have my office send an invitation to the board. And we will have snacks and beverages.
Just snacks, though, no
Yeah, don't get
privacy.
excited about